The 405 Media is an Amazon associate. You can be a 405 Media sponsor and pay nothing extra. Do you shop Amazon? You should. Click on the banner on top of our homepage. Shop and be a sponsor of the 405media.com.
We will now pause for station identification. This is NUTS.
What are you doing here?
Are you trying to give me the double talk?
Radio.
Shut up and start talking.
And then make a left and come 405 north. From there, just get off Mulholland.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com from Los Angeles, California. Good morning. How is your Saturday? It is 7 Pacifico, 10 on the lesser coast. And that means time once again for the original and classic Gang of 405. You want to reach us on the telephone? It is toll-free, no call screener. Do it, baby. 877-297-8022. If you want to send us a tweet, we are watching that out of the corner of our eye. On Twitter, it is at the 405 Radio. Or if you want to send us a plain old vanilla generic email, the405radio at the405radio.com. And as usual, a treasure trove of podcasts of past shows are waiting for you for free on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker. They're there. Check them out. All of our original talk on the vaunted podcasserole, as we say. And if you like live streaming as we do, you'll want to catch us on iTunes, TuneIn, Live 365, Roku, MP3, and there's even a dial-up option, folks. Check out the 405media.com, and in the right-hand column, there's a number you can dial anytime to listen to any of our talk shows. If, for instance, you've got a smartphone and the man limits your data, it's free on dial-up in most cases, so take a listen to that. Let us introduce you to the gang for another Saturday morning. Scott Jones, Pops Radio on Twitter. He calls himself independent. He is a Republican. We've verified that. And he is somewhat moderate. He's a campaign guy. He knows public relations. He knows communications. And you can trust him because he is from Texas. And he's also host of Pissed Off Politically Speaking with Scott Jones on the 405media.com. And that's Monday morning, early, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. You know, as we say, we can't all move to Texas, and that's why there's Scott Jones. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, guys. Glad to be with you.
And it's Tammy Jackson. She is on the Tammy Jackson Show Tuesday nights, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock on the Lesser Coast. And she is also the bossy boss of rightvoicemedia.com. You can find her on Twitter at Tammy J. Good morning, Tammy Jackson.
Good morning, John. Glad to be here with you and Scott again.
And I'm going to brag up our site a little bit because, frankly, if I don't, nobody else will. We made some changes, and these are kind of techie geeky, but I think they're a big deal. We made it so that if you're reading our blogs or our headlines or something other than a podcast or another live show, you can see what is streaming without leaving the blog or article and actually listen. So we moved that whole operation over to the right side of the page. So, for instance, if you're reading a blog by Servative, and our show is streaming. You can see that now. You can see a picture of us or whomever, and you can actually listen to it. So we think that's kind of a cool, again, minor thing, but, basically we launched the site to promote our radio broadcasts, and, we like the blogs and other stuff too, but we can't get you to listen to the shows, then we're not doing our job here, and we think it's working. We do see a lot more listenership to some of the shows, so we think that was a winner. Speaking of blogs, there is one regarding Bo Bergdahl by Servative, and the title is Betrayal in the Rose Garden. Getting a lot of views on that this week, so you'll definitely want to check that out. That, I think, very adequately harnesses the outrage of the Taliban for Bo Bergdahl trade that the Obama administration pulled off, going on a week now. Also, you'll want to catch up on the new adventures of Hidden Cash, the San Francisco, home flipper, who may or may not be outed. I'm watching his Twitter feed, and he insists he's not the person that the news reports say that he is. We put a little voice analysis up there, and what you can do is you can listen to a phone call with one of the tabloid shows on TV, and then listen to a podcast he did on real estate, I think about a year ago, and I think you might conclude it's the same guy. But anyway, he seems very protective of his identity. I don't know whether he's fibbing about being the guy that people think he is, but it's out there, and I think for at least another 15 minutes he'll be interesting. So, partner podcasts. Bill Post is back. We don't have his podcasts on our site, but we do stream his show nightly, and we do link to his show. He is an internet-only broadcaster right now, folks. He has left the friendly confines of AM radio, and he is one of us. So I think, in all seriousness, this ain't as easy as it looks, and Bill's kind of finding that out. So we welcome him to the Talkquarium here at the 405 Media. You also want to check out Chris Ann Hall, who is a Florida sort of libertarian. We run her show weekdays. It's a brand new show, and it's a different show every weekday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Detect Guy, 9 o'clock Pacific for 2 hours. He is out of Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, and we pick up his show. Cooper Talk, Steve Cooper from Burbank, California. He interviews some stars, some comedians, some writers. Always got some fun, non-political stuff up there. And truth be told, I think he probably leans more to the left, which shows how big we are, in including him in our little Talkquarium. But that's Cooper Talk. Chris Brake Show, rot.org, John Matthews, also known as That Radio Show, Marty O'Sullivan, ABCs of Whatever. That's kind of our weekend Sunday morning show. We'll put a new episode up tomorrow morning. Conservative Echo Chamber, brand new episode of that up there. And that is in our partner section, per usual. And a little bit of news here. A guy who used to do some radio here, actually a couple of guys, is coming back. And his name is Hutch Bailey Jr., and his partner's name is Chris Ivan. He has a couple of shows, and I believe we're going to run both of them. One of them is called Steel City Resistance, and the other one is called Cold War Radio. So you'll want to look for Hutch's shows sitting up in the partner section as well. We're going to try to arrange to let him stream those live here. Now, we're not going to produce the shows. He's on at some hours that make that problematic, but we're going to see if we can set up a kind of a Channel 2 here and let him stream those shows from Pittsburgh, where he originates, all by himself, so you can catch them live. So stay tuned for that. Today, winners and losers and predictions coming up at the end of the show. Here's the topics I want to cover. There has been a number of stories about this dumping of illegal immigrants by the federal government in states like Arizona. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read a piece that came in over USA Today just this morning here. Evidently, every week, about 1,000 Central American kids, these are not Mexicans, they're from Central America, are walking over the border unaccompanied by adults. And they are sitting in holding areas, in most cases military bases, I believe, and the government is sort of deciding what to do about them next. And what they're going to do about them next will probably disappoint you and probably won't surprise you. So anyway, I guess the question you have to ask is the border really secure if a 6-year-old kid can hop the fence alone? I think you know the answer to that question. Later on in the show, we'll get to one or both of these topics. A judge struck down Wisconsin's traditional marriage law, and that's becoming a trend. You know, I think, and I wrote about this on the site some time ago, conservatives need to have a discussion on the realities of same-sex marriage and courts and legislatures. And I'll let it go at that for now. We hope, want to talk about Operation Choke Point, and this has a number of moving parts to it. In 2013, the Obama administration decided it would use its authority to slap down financial institutions it deemed were engaging in, finger quotes, risky behavior. Well, what's really going on is social engineering and a deliberate attempt to put the hurt on, among other people, banks who do business with gun shops and payday loan companies. So we will try to get to that before the end of the show. And before we go to a break here, you guys been keeping up on this shooting at Seattle Pacific University?
I have not really. I've been aware of it because I have a lot of friends that went to that school. It's a really great Christian liberal arts college, and I've never heard of anything untoward happening on that campus.
Well, we put a piece up on the site, which is actually a link to the wedding registry of the hero, who is John Mees, I believe his last name is. He is a student monitor, student teacher, I believe, and while the shooter was reloading, he took his pepper spray out and let him have it. At that point, a number of other students sort of overcame this guy, and that was pretty much the end of it. Well, it turns out young Mr. Mees is getting married in a couple of weeks, and I found this link someplace else. So we put his wedding registry out there, and it's at Target, so you know he's not some snot who is going to criticize you for your food and drink pairings. He sounds like a pretty down-to-earth kid. So
wow, that's awesome.
I threw this together. I wanted to bounce this off you guys before we go to the break. You know, Seattle Pacific University is a Christian college. It's a religious institution. You know that, right?
Yes, that's what I said earlier.
Okay.
Yep. I have friends that went there.
Right. Now, UC Santa Barbara is a secular university, not to mention the fact that it's in California. Okay? So follow me here. So the Seattle Pacific University students, following the shooting, grieved and prayed and celebrated their reluctant hero. On the other hand, the mob in and around Santa Barbara blamed the NRA and affiliated political figures.
Oh, my word.
Aaron Ibarra, the Seattle shooter, showed no signs of his impending rampage. Elliot Rodger, on the other hand, told everyone and anyone what he intended to do, and nobody paid attention. By the way, Aaron Ibarra used a shotgun, in case you were wondering, not a semi-automatic weapon, which evidently has been endorsed by none other than Joe Biden. Anyway, I'm going to get a little goofy here. The mascot for SPU is a falcon, brave, strong, fierce, and the mascot for UCSB is a gaucho, which is a South American cowboy, usually untamed, and as we know, cowboys are usually on the run from some problems. So there you go. So there is my thought piece on the shooting at Seattle Pacific University. We'll come right back. We will talk about the humanitarian crisis caused by the federal government at the border with unaccompanied children crossing over and being warehoused on military bases. It is the original and classic Gang of 405 here on the 405media.com. John Grant in Los Angeles. Tammy Jackson is in Oregon. And Scott Jones in Texas. We will come right back. Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
The Friddle Show.
Gay marriage is not even legal in Arizona, so how is this cake discussion even relevant?
The Friddle Show with Crystal Heath.
I mean, this bill, I read it today. You can read it. It's 2 pages long.
The Friddle Show, live Monday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific.
It's become acceptable to sleep around. Did you know that only 3% of Americans abstain from sex until they're married?
The Friddle Show, family-friendly, politically incorrect news commentary from a young Christian conservative perspective.
And if my disagreeing with a lifestyle due to my religious beliefs is now the same as hatred, then I apparently hate 97% of Americans.
Live original talk only on the 405media.com.
The president, he wasn't too far off base when he said that we're no longer a Christian nation because, quite frankly, we're not. The general populace does not have a biblical worldview.
You're on the 405.
We are a bold and active voice for the unborn. We are Audio Girl Ministries, saving the lives of babies by helping moms in crisis pregnancies get past the crisis. How? Free ultrasound imaging so the woman can see the life she's carrying, and by supplying her with essential baby items, diapers, clothes, food, crib, car seat, all given with a loving and caring heart. Want to help? Log on to audiogirlministries.com and make a tax-deductible donation. audiogirlministries.com. Thanks.
Hey, it's John Grant from the 405media.com. We'd like to say we gave Bill Post his start doing a radio show on the Internet. That would be partially true. We would like to congratulate Bill on the move to BillPost.com, where you can hear Bill and other great talk 24/7. No more AM, no more FM, just BillPost.com. And in your spare time, check out some great talk and a little nonsense at the 405media.com. Take it away, Bill Post.
CSC Talk Radio is proud to be a part of 405media.com.
Listen to Beth Ann and Common Sense Conversations Talk Radio, weeknights, 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern, here on the 405media.com.
This is Brandon Darby. You're listening to the 405 Radio.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com from Los Angeles, California. It's Saturday, and that means it's time for the original and classic Gang of 405. You want to reach us toll-free on the show, it's 877-297-8022. John Grant here, per usual, in Los Angeles, California. Scott Jones in Texas, Tammy Jackson in Oregon. We kind of skipped over this in the previous segment, but we do want to talk about your shows coming up this week. Tammy, talk about Tuesday and Wednesday and what is coming up on the Tammy Jackson Show.
On Tuesday, I'm really excited. I've got an interview with Stephen Pressfield. And for those of you, if that sounds familiar and you can't quite place him, he wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, Gates of Fire. He's a world-renowned writer. He usually writes war novels, but he's written a new book, The Lion's Gate, and it is true stories. It's like a band of brothers about the Six-Day War, and it's a fantastic book. I'm very, very excited to have him on. And on Wednesday, we will be debuting the Hump Day News Report with Jeff Dunitz. People know him as Yid with Lid. He's pretty famous, especially in the Northeast, where he writes a lot. He writes for the Jewish Star. He works for truthrevolt.org. Ben Shapiro's.
I like him, Tammy.
I like Truth Revolt.
Yeah.
So, let the record show that anytime he wants one of those Truth Revolt people on the show, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro, anybody.
Yeah.
I know that that's a somewhat controversial site in some segments of the conservative movement, but I like to read it. I really do.
Yeah, it's a good site, and Jeff is a good man and a good friend of mine. So it's going to be the Hump Day News Report with Jeff and Tammy, and it's Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, and we're really excited. And we're already lining up guests, and Jeff is already telling jokes about how we decided on the time, how I wanted 7 p.m. Pacific, and he wanted 10 p.m. Eastern, but he let me have my way, and we went. He said, no, we compromised and went for 8 p.m. Central or something, or Mountain Time. So we're
actually, I think I have the final say as to when the show starts, but that's neither here nor there.
You do, but he's.
Were you going to say something, Scott?
He's funny that way.
No, I was just saying I really like Jeff Dunitz. He was on our show last year sometime, and I really enjoyed talking to him. He's a character.
He's fun, and we thought it would be fun because I'm West Coast, he's East Coast, he's got that Northeast accent, I'm just kind of this goofy gal that goes with the flow, and we're good friends, so we can have fun. He teases me, and I still laugh, and yet we're news hounds, and we like politics, and he's a conservative Jew, and I'm a conservative Christian, but, this will be a fun mix.
And Scott, you've got some news on the Brett Baer front and Special Heart. We had him both on last week Saturday, and you had him on Monday.
Yeah, we did, and kind of all in on that. We're going to reprise that episode this Monday, not because I'm lazy, but because I've got a previous commitment. And I found out last night that they have just entered the third printing of Special Heart. This was just announced last night, and it's only been out a week. So
wow.
I think
excellent.
Go ahead, John.
And you got some signed copies for us, and eagerly waiting those in snail mail, and we appreciate that.
You bet. Actually, mailed them from the big downtown post office of Grandview, Texas, and they should be to you shortly. He very much appreciated all the help and the support of everyone. The turnout has been really good at his book signings, and he's got a few more. I would urge people, if you want to meet him and he's coming to a town near you, the specialheartfamily.com is the place to go. But we're going to rerun the episode this Monday. I'm working on another show for a week from Monday. I'm going to try to get out of the Fox News basket and bring in some folks that I love the Fox News people, but it's nice to have another view of the world. But third printing was announced for the book last night, and I want to thank all of the 405 radio listeners who have been so supportive and listening and engaged in the thing. And I thank my partners here for the great job. Honestly, I think our Gang of 405 interview turned out better than my Monday show. Paul was adorable.
You were really a nervous Nelly about that. I thought you did a great job with young Paul Baer.
Well, I listened to the podcast, and it's always hard when you're actually doing the interview to hear it, but I thought the round table with him and the whole segment on the Gang of 405 last week was great, and he mentioned to me in person when I saw him Thursday that he thought it worked out really well and appreciated all the support we've given him. So that's a story from my end.
A genuinely nice guy.
Absolutely.
He is. He's just as nice in person as you think he is on TV.
All right, let's light the fire here. According to news reports, about 1,000 minors a week are crossing the southern border unaccompanied. They're being warehoused on military bases and other government property, and it's being called a humanitarian disaster. There's a piece also this morning in USA Today, and I believe Fox News, that indicates that some of these people are being flown to Arizona, which is a whole other story. The response by the Obama administration has been to send lawyers. Obama and Eric Holder have announced a $2 million program to entice immigration lawyers. Now, this is child trafficking, no matter how you slice it, right? And their parents are mules here. Let's be honest about that. And the Obama administration, I will say, is an accessory after the fact. Wouldn't you agree? Scott, when the arguments are made pro-immigration, particularly with regard to illegals who have been here some time and their children, we hear they've already been here, they've assimilated into the American system for years, they're part of our society. But this is different because these kids are being sent across the border expressly to game our weak system, and we're being played for suckers here. And Obama sends a message to their parents wherever they are. If you smuggle your kid across the border, we'll give him a lawyer, and he's here to stay. What do you think about that?
Well, John, this is a classic cause and effect situation. Only under the Obama administration could we become a third world country in our border situation. And, color me not totally shocked when this administration basically decided that they were going to ignore certain immigration laws and basically by fiat implement the DREAM Act. It's not surprising to me that such wave of younger folks who are being sent here to, I guess, drop anchor, if you will, to use a metaphor, as you say, to not to just game the system, but to somehow fast-track their own pathway to either a green card or permanent citizenship. And just when you think, John and Tammy, that it can't get any worse or there's nothing else that this administration can do that is either shocking or just you shake your head, something like this comes along. But it should not be a huge surprise that this is happening, as tragic as it is, based on Obama's own stated policy of non-enforcement and attracting basically dreamer groups here. And the only difference is it's not only Mexico, as you indicated, John. They're coming from Central American countries, and we come up with a plan not to deal with almost what I would consider a refugee situation, to feed, house, and support them. We're going to give them a lawyer. I mean, it's just incredible.
Tammy, one Republican senator calls this an administration-made disaster. That's a cleverly coined term, in my opinion. In other words, through neglect, commission or omission, the administration did nothing to stop it. Now it declares it a disaster and sends in lawyers. I find this to be rather Cloward Piven-like, don't you? Where we flood the system with mayhem and then later come in with some government solution that only the Obama administration can administer and set right. Doesn't that sound like what's going on here?
Exactly. It's Rules for Radicals 101. And anybody that's a revolutionary or studied revolution has told us that what we do is cause chaos and then send in the feds to rescue. Now, I have some questions. How can they bring in 1,000 kids per day or week, whatever it is, from Mexico and other Central American countries, and yet not one bit of help from Marine Andrew Tamarisi? And we have an American pastor, a Christian pastor, Pastor Saeed Abedini, who's been imprisoned in Iran for more than a year because of his Christian faith, and he may be, murdered. We don't know what's going to happen, and not one bit of help for him. So what we see is an administration that has an agenda. They get in who they want, and right now they want these illegal immigrant children, and we're supposed to feel bad because it's all about the children. But we've got some other definite cases of an American citizen or Christians elsewhere that are imprisoned unlawfully, and the president does nothing. So they pick and choose who they want to help, and it's for their agenda.
See, for me, here and now, immigration has always been about Obama, and this is the source of my vast disappointment with Republican leadership. The past is a pretty good predictor of the future, and if Obama creates this kind of disaster and breaks the laws he swears to enforce, why, Scott Jones, create more laws which he certainly seems bound and determined to break? Why don't Republicans get that? Why this rush to pass immigration this summer?
Well, I think they do get that, John, and that's why immigration isn't going to pass this summer. I mean, there's
an early prediction. We'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make that my prediction for this show. Immigration reform is not going to pass this summer, and for the very reason that you state. And John, let's just step back and look at it holistically. When you go down the litany of things, and I don't want to revisit let's just say Exhibit A is a list of scandals involving the Justice Department and this administration. Then you look at the non-enforcement of existing immigration laws, and then you look at the Bergdahl situation here of recent and comments by people in this administration who now just blatantly lie and really don't care. And then if enough media scream, they try to explain the lie with an additional set of lies. There is zero trust from, I would say, not just Republicans in Congress, but I think there is a growing faction of Democrats in Congress, in both the Senate and the House, that don't trust this president or have had the trust broken on some major issues. I'm thinking of Dianne Feinstein over the whole Bergdahl trade thing. Why pass a law that even if you sit across the table from the President of the United States, he looks you in the eye and agrees to terms and shakes your hand, you pass it, he signs it, and you can't trust him to adhere to it, why bother? I mean, something's going to have to change.
I agree.
And whether that's a majority in the Senate or waiting till 2016 when we have a different president, I don't blame the GOP for not trusting this president, and they're not alone in this. There's a growing set of Democrats that agree with us on this.
If you look at those pictures in Breitbart, and I don't read Breitbart, I just look at the pictures, these look like the orphanages that Newt Gingrich gets blamed for advocating, don't they? I mean, these are kids sitting on the floor in big halls waiting for someone to what? Process them? What do you think is going to happen when there is a bipartisan green light to a path for citizenship? I mean, this country is unable to deal with this. Obama is unwilling to deal with this. You're going to have dozens and dozens and maybe hundreds and hundreds of these facilities because when 6, 7, 8-year-old kids get over the border and nobody stops them, there is no border security. Tammy?
There is not, and I'm just appalled at this. I feel sorry for kids for sure, but look, our economy is bottoming out. We have. I know people that are wondering. I know a family in Arizona that's a good, hardworking family. He lost his job, hasn't worked in 5 months. Last month, they didn't know if they were going to be able to pay their bills. And he has worked their whole married life. They have a number of kids, good kids that they're taking care of. And I see that, and then I think, what are we doing here? We've got to be about America first. I'm sorry, as tough as it seems, we've got to do that. And this whole thing with the border, I just don't get it, except that this president seems to have a lot of malevolence in his arsenal, and he doesn't seem to be doing one single thing that's good for the United States right now.
See, Scott, I think Republicans, a lot of them are afraid. They're afraid of business lobbies like the Chamber of Commerce, who wants to open the floodgates on all these high-tech visas, even though study after study shows there's no shortage of high-tech workers in the United States. So they look at these pictures of these kids sitting in these facilities, and why can't they connect the dots? Because that's exactly what these business groups like the Chamber of Commerce are going to get started if they get this comprehensive immigration reform. I think, Scott, Republicans are just afraid to push back on it because they're going to be labeled as anti-immigrant.
Well, I think that's part of it, John, and we've got some very important, elections coming up here. I do think it's part of it, but what's been created here, and I don't know that the Chamber of Commerce types necessarily support the imagery and the articles, that we read in preparation for this segment. But I will.
But basically, legislatively speaking, they're one and the same thing, because this is comprehensive immigration reform. This is the green light to people on the other side of the border waiting to make their move. This is exactly what will happen. Sort of, partition those or to, segregate those topics. It's just not realistic because that's not what's going to happen if a law like they're proposing gets passed.
Yeah, well, as I indicated earlier, only under this administration where we are taking immigration laws, bypassing them, green-lighting certain things, and creating our own, and I'll use this term again, third world humanitarian problem. I mean, the imagery that you sent, and I encourage people to look at this article that John sent on Breitbart. It looks like the border between Syria and Jordan. I mean, it is nothing. This is not America. This is not the way we do things, and it takes an exceptionally either incompetent or a deliberately dispassionate administration to legislate and govern. And that's the problem that this administration has. They like the title, they like the pomp and circumstance, but governing is hard, okay? And they continue to fail us as a country by doing the hard things and making the hard choices. And, as Tammy used the word malevolent, his malevolent self does these things and doesn't think through the unintended consequences. And I will tell you, John, if this is what the Chamber of Commerce, as you indicate, supports, I think it's going to come back and it's going to bite them in the ass. That's just my opinion.
Help me understand how you can separate what's going on at those Air Force bases in Texas and Arizona with what the Chamber of Commerce wants. We have to start connecting the dots here, people. I understand Republicans don't like to be painted as anti-immigrant, but, you have to look at the human catastrophe that comes along with, what's been said and what's been done by this administration where immigration is concerned, and not simply give them carte blanche to do more of this. Here's a piece from azcentral.com. The federal government Friday began sending hundreds of unaccompanied children caught crossing the border illegally in Texas to a holding center in Nogales, Arizona, further straining relations with Governor Jan Brewer. I think you saw this coming, who was already angry over the recent release of hundreds of undocumented families at bus stations in Phoenix and Tucson. Brewer said she learned Friday that 432 children were transported to a holding facility in Nogales, and that an additional 732 children could be brought there today and Sunday. Brewer spokesman Andrew Wilder told the Associated Press that conditions at the holding facility in Nogales are so dire that the state is releasing federal medical and other supplies to that facility. A regional director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, there's your FEMA camps, baby, was also being sent to Arizona to manage the crisis, Wilder told the AP. The Border Patrol has been overwhelmed by a surge of undocumented immigrants crossing the border illegally in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, including nearly 50,000 children traveling on their own, the AP reported. Tammy Jackson, I'll give you the last word on this.
Oh, my goodness. Where to start?
Breathtaking.
Yeah,
Stunning.
it is breathtaking, and the GOP has never been anti-immigration. We are anti-illegal immigration. We are all for legal immigration and assimilation into our American culture. Our system cannot absorb 500 to 1,000 kids per day, and they cannot be assimilated. FEMA's taking care of them. We know how well that worked down in Louisiana. This whole thing is nothing but a nightmare. I love kids, but these kids need to go back to their home countries. We cannot allow this.
But, Scott, I think the GOP sucks at pushing back on narratives such as that they're anti-immigrant. And when they essentially surrender that argument, then stuff like this happens, and it's too late to do something about it.
That's right. And then the narrative becomes, well, all of these children are fleeing poverty and oppression and child trafficking and this and that and the other.
Well, listen to this. This is Holder, right? Attorney General Eric Holder said Friday the new program, which is to use lawyers through this AmeriCorps Foundation, in his words, a historic step to strengthen our system and protect the rights of the most vulnerable members of society. Whose society is this anyway?
That was my immediate question.
Right.
And this piece says that 60,000 to 90,000 children traveling alone could be apprehended at the U.S.-Mexican border this year, many times the number taken into custody in recent years.
Oh, my goodness.
So we're going to wrap that up and come back. We're going to talk about the gay marriage ban, which seems to be falling at the state level like dominoes. Wisconsin, the latest state to have their law struck down. We will squeeze in a discussion, we hope, of the choke point situation, which is the Obama administration trying to cut off legitimate businesses by muscling banks who do business with them. The original and classic Gang of 405 here on the 405media.com. We'll come right back.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you. Voces Latinas.
Rubio has a 100% rating from AFP. He has like a 97% rating from Heritage. He votes wildly conservative, more conservative than 98% of senators on 98% of the issues. Why fire Rubio over one issue?
Voces Latinas, live, only on the 405media.com.
We don't want to fire Rubio over one issue.
We had 40 Hispanics walking around, and all they see, they don't, is pink slip Rubio, pink slip Rubio. Pink slip to me is fire.
Voces Latinas, Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, only on the 405media.com.
But is it strategically smart to publicly heckle and call him a traitor? Rubio was lambasted publicly by Limbaugh. Michelle Malkin screams shamnesty like it's her job. I mean, shamnesty. Air your grievances with Rubio all you want, but I can't help it when I work with the Latino youth community trying to make them conservative, bring them to the conservative movement, and they're all like, well, Rubio's the only one that cares about us, and they hate him. They yell shamnesty at him.
You're on the 405.
Off the grid.
And he's also the only person I've ever seen that could write, my dog just rolled over on Facebook and get like 62 likes.
I'm also, just a correction, I'm the best looking person in social media, too.
Off the grid with Matt Hochman and Beckett Adams.
You have men in the United States Army running for cover and hoping the police show up.
You know, the base is a soft target that's filled with brave Americans, but they got their hands tied.
I'm sure the jihadists completely consider it a soft target. It's like a shopping mall, or like you said, a school. It's probably worse than a shopping mall, because at least here in Arizona, you're allowed to carry.
In several of these shootings, Jared Lautner in Arizona, the Sandy Hook shooting, a number of these shootings always involved somebody who was desperately unhealthy in the head, but for some reason the argument always turns into, get away from my gun. What can we do to maybe help people like this?
Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, only on the 405media.com.
You're on the 405.
CSC Talk Radio is proud to be a part of 405media.com.
Listen to Beth Ann and Common Sense Conversations Talk Radio, weeknights, 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern, here on the 405media.com.
Hey everybody, this is Tammy Jackson, and I hope you can join me each and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on the 405 for the Tammy Jackson Show. Turn off that TV. You can record NCIS, the sitcoms aren't funny, and the reality shows don't begin to address the realities facing our nation now concerning the economy, the Second Amendment, foreign policy, and the culture war. We have fun, but take the issues seriously, and I love talking to you. So join me on the 405 Tuesday night at 8 for the Tammy Jackson Show.
Hey, this is Tony Katz, and you're listening to the 405 Radio because, you know, you're smart like that.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com from Los Angeles, California. You are listening to the original and classic Gang of 405. We do the show live on Saturdays, so if you're checking out the podcast, check the live show. That's more fun. I think so, but then again, I'm a little biased. Canusa Sports Desk coming up at the top of the next hour, or probably your next podcast with Derek Marquez and Cale Orge, so make sure you are listening to that. All right, only an hour after a judge struck down Wisconsin's same-sex marriage ban, clerks in Madison and Milwaukee started issuing marriage licenses. Now, this piece says after 5 o'clock on a Friday, which sort of makes you scratch your head, right? I mean, I guarantee there's no government service open after 5 o'clock on a Friday, right? Except for this. DMV, post office, maybe. So the eagerness to stay open and issue these licenses is rather curious, don't you think? But anyway, state after state is seeing its same-sex marriage law struck down. Tammy Jackson, why should conservatives believe the fight for traditional marriage in courts or legislatures is winnable? And if it's not, as I believe it is not, what's the next step?
Oh my goodness. I will always be for traditional marriage, and I will never argue any other way. But maybe we've got to focus at least on some of the other issues. I guess it's really, really tough because I won't give up my principles. Doesn't mean I'm a hater. I love people, absolutely do, regardless of their preference in their own privacy. But it looks like we've got an executive system not only in the federal area, but in the state areas. As we get into each state, the executive of each state is pretty much taken over, and they're not going to allow anything but same-sex marriage. And the problem is that I do think there's a slippery slope, and I do believe it's wrong, and I do believe there is a slippery slope, but I don't know if there's anything we can do about it at this point, if it's just too late.
Scott, here's my take on this, and I believe this is going to make social conservatives angry at me, but here it goes. I think the more the courts press this, the less the issue overwhelms the rest of the conservative message in 2014 and 2016. Yeah, I'm not suggesting surrender here, but what I'm saying is, from a political strategy standpoint, this sort of takes the issue off the table, and social conservatives can still hold liberals culpable. Scott Walker, who I think is a pretty smart guy, and I think has an excellent chance of being reelected, said, look, this is in the courts now. And it seems to me like, Scott, guys like Brent Bozell are the ones making a big stink about it, and not people like Scott Walker or his opponent, Mary Burke. So, maybe this sort of clears the deck for elections in 2014 and 2016. We can move on and talk about some other stuff.
Well, I think your analysis is right, and I guess we all have to have labels, and I call myself a moderate. I guess the moderate part of me is on some of the social issues, and I say some. I picked the moderate label because I guess it just fits everybody else's definition. I don't like the labels, but on this issue,
we give you some good-natured ribbing about it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It's kind of a cocktail term, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not squishy about what I believe. I'm just not a Kool-Aid drinker of any flavor. And the social issues are where, from an electoral standpoint, that I think the GOP gets in trouble, especially factions that want to lead with them instead of what's really important to the electorate. But on this issue, I think I would agree with you that Walker's position for this election cycle is probably a pretty smart one, and I'll give you an example. We are having the Texas GOP convention in Fort Worth as we speak right now. And there are people within the convention there that are trying to define a position for at least the state party on this very issue.
And I think there's a young GOP movement nationally, I read, that is trying to wipe this out altogether. In other words, completely remove it from any mention of any GOP platform at any level, state or national. But go ahead.
But you're setting up my point perfectly. Everything I've read on Twitter, and the thing I'm reading in the reporting on this is there are, what you would say the more conservative wing of even the state GOP are saying, if you take this up or if you do X, Y, and Z, I'm done and I'm out of the state GOP. It is still a lightning rod issue in certain corners of the United States. And I like what Scott Walker has done. Me personally, I'm a live and let live guy. I don't mind civil unions, but I'm not going to support legislation that would force religious institutions or anybody else to perform or to provide services.
I'll say this about the live and let live thing, and then we'll move on. There's a story about a Colorado baker who was ordered to make same-sex wedding cakes by a anti-discrimination agency.
Yep.
One has gone out of the cake business altogether. So I guess if you're straight or gay and you want a wedding cake at Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado, you're SOL. So this really isn't live and let live. And the effect is to destroy things and not really give people more access.
I would agree with that. And it is not an easy issue for people. And, there's going to be some glitches along the road, but I'm going to come down with where I think you were going with this, that if you lead with that issue in this election cycle, you're going to get creamed and you're going to get labeled as a hater. I mean, what Tammy described as her position as probably more conservative than me, there's nothing offensive about that, but and I admire that she wants to stick to her principles, but they're not going to let people like Tammy get away without labeling them as haters. And I'm just suggesting that from an election strategy standpoint, it is a mistake to lead with the social issues this cycle.
Okay, quickly. The Obama administration is threatening to investigate financial institutions as part of Operation Choke Point, which is a 2013 initiative it claims targets risky or fraud-prone lending practices. Sounds good on paper, right? Well, in actuality, the Justice Department is using the program to take out political hits on legal businesses such as payday lenders. Already 80 banks have stopped doing business with them, and there is talk that gun dealers and Tea Party groups are next. Tammy Jackson, the IRS tried and failed to do this to some extent. States are enacting more laws to protect Second Amendment rights. But what's happening now is that the federal government merely has to drop a hint. It'll investigate you, and as a bank, you will cut off a customer, be it a payday loan center or a gun shop.
This whole thing is very chilling.
Raw intimidation.
Yeah, this thing is very chilling to me, and I told you guys before we started the show that it reminded me immediately, I thought of after the HGTV that canceled the Benham Brothers show, and after they had canceled David and Jason Benham's show, they then put some pressure on SunTrust Banks, who at first canceled all business with the Benham Brothers. They did walk it back, and now I hear...
Scott Jones, this is even more insidious. I'm sorry to cut you off. We're running out of time, Tammy. But,
okay.
In the case of SunTrust Bank, there is a private institution who does this unilaterally. And we can all agree that we hate that. But unless somebody from the government, ginned that up, and I guess in thinking about Operation Choke Point, it's certainly possible that they could use that for this purpose. This is like the days of, I hate to use the word, Gestapo, Stasi. It's the muscle that repressive regimes used to get you to fall in line, Scott.
That's exactly right. The SunTrust thing was just a gutless wonder of a decision from a private institution. I don't think there was government interference there. But, John, this choke point thing, especially with the gun shops, is exactly what you just described. It's Gestapo-like tactics, and the same thing they're doing with coal at the EPA to shut down an industry. They're trying to backdoor gun control by squeezing gun shops and the point of delivery of firearms to the public. So it is, I told you, and O'Reilly said this, that somebody who's a Democrat in the current administration and currently working within the administration, it was related to this Bergdahl thing, but he made the comment that what's going on at the White House right now, he is a, quote, afraid for our country. Now, when you have Democrats in the sitting administration starting to say that, people better start paying attention. And this example you just point out here with this choke point thing is a great example, and your analogy is dead on. It's the weaponization of government against things that they're ideologically opposed to, or they want to stifle free speech. We've seen it time and time again, and if people don't wake the hell up, in the next 2 years, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Absolutely.
Okay, quick break. We'll come back with winners and losers and predictions. Show's almost over, folks. It's the original and classic Gang of 405. We'll be right back.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
The Friddle Show.
Gay marriage is not even legal in Arizona, so how is this cake discussion even relevant?
The Friddle Show with Crystal Heath.
I mean, this bill, I read it today. You can read it. It's 2 pages long.
The Friddle Show, live Monday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific.
It's become acceptable to sleep around. Did you know that only 3% of Americans abstain from sex until they're married?
The Friddle Show, family-friendly, politically incorrect news commentary from a young Christian conservative perspective.
And if my disagreeing with a lifestyle due to my religious beliefs is now the same as hatred, then I apparently hate 97% of Americans.
Live original talk only on the 405media.com.
The president, he wasn't too far off base when he said that we're no longer a Christian nation because, quite frankly, we're not. The general populace does not have a biblical worldview.
You're on the 405.
Hi, this is Dana Perino, and you're listening to the 405 Radio.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com from Los Angeles. The live show on Saturday morning, we do at least one of 2 of them, is the original and classic Gang of 405. Scott Jones is in Texas. Tammy Jackson is in Oregon. And this is John Grant here for a couple of more minutes. I wanted to just wrap up real quickly the subject of Operation Choke Point. And as we mentioned, this is just sort of a larger scheme, I guess, on the part of the Obama administration to get people to fall in line and to control them, Tammy. Go ahead and finish your point on that.
Well, I just agreed with everything Scott said, because in the first instance that I gave with David and Jason Bannon, that reminded me of the Corleone family, that it was more of a private entity that was doing this and that was putting pressure to bear. In the second instance, where we have the government, it's what Scott said, it is the weaponization of the government. That's what the Nazis did prior to World War II, and we need to be really, really paying close attention.
There was a caller on Rush Limbaugh's show this week, and Rush was off. He had some guest hosts, and Mark Belling was the host, who's my favorite because he's from Wisconsin. All right, I freely admit that. Anyway, what the caller said was, and this is going to seem extreme to some people, he said, they can't line you up and shoot you. So what they do is they beat you over the head with charges of racism and other things to get you to fall in line. I thought that was perfect. These are the same people as the Castros, the Maduros, as the Lenins, the Khrushchevs, and the Putins. They just don't have the tools at their disposal to force you to do things their way. They're just doing it in other methods.
They're more sly about it. There are still ideologues that are forcing a worldview and a thought system on us, and they're just using these arms of government to do it.
All right. Winners, losers, predictions. Scott Jones, you are first.
My winner for the week is going to be pediatric heart research, thanks to the efforts of Brett Baer. As I said at the beginning of the show, third printing of the book, 100% of the proceeds going to pediatric heart research. So kudos to him for that gesture. My loser has got to be a big gold medal the size of something P. Diddy would wear for Susan Rice.
Oh, no!
My God.
I'm going to be sick.
A train wreck on Sunday talk shows with honor and distinction, and then explaining it, making it worse. And
there's a little tinfoil hat out there on her, which is that somebody in the administration is setting her up for these falls. No, I don't know. I'm just saying.
I'm telling you, can she be that incompetent? And then my prediction, I'm going to go with what you deemed earlier, and that is no immigration reform this summer.
Okay, Tammy, you're up.
Okay, my winners are the D-Day veterans, 150,000 men who stormed Normandy shores 70 years ago. They are our greatest generation, and they're.
We were going to play a piece this morning with Jake Tapper and Stephen Colbert. Colbert had an uncle who served in World War II and was part of the landing party.
Wow.
He actually has a very touching remembrance of that, some family albums, but...
It was CNN nice. I saw it.
Yeah, CNN changed the audio around, so I wasn't able to get it. So,
well, and if people,
I guess, for those of us who think that Colbert is an asshat, he has another side to him. But anyway, go ahead, Tammy.
And if people have time, they should listen to Reagan's speech to the boys at Pont de Hoc. Yes. My loser, believe it or not, was Susan Rice, who said Bergdahl served honorably. So we're thinking alike, Scott. My prediction is we're going to find out cui bono, or who profits from the Bergdahl exchange, because the Haqqani network is a terrorist organization that's motivated to cause terror and to make money to cause terror. So this was not a swap that went about without some money.
I thought cui bono was one of Sonny and Cher's kids. What does it mean? Give us translation for those of us in the stupid wing of the party.
Yeah, that's just pulling a little Latin out of my hat.
Did you do your prediction?
That was my prediction, that we're going to find out cui bono from the Bergdahl exchange.
I got to pay attention here. Okay, winner, Greg Steinberg, Waukesha, Wisconsin, riding his bike, discovered a 12-year-old girl crawling out of a wooded area. She'd been stabbed 19 times by friends who wanted to pay homage to the online character Slender Man. Loser, LeBron James, baby. Miami Heat left Game 1 of the NBA Finals with cramps. Do you believe that? That's not very big league.
Maybe need some Midol.
Gatorade was quick to say they're not a sponsor. Prediction, I'm a homer. California Chrome wins Belmont in the Triple Crown.
Oh, yeah.
So that is it for the original and classic Gang of 405 here on the 405media.com. Thanks to Tammy Jackson and Scott Jones. And until next Saturday, this is John Grant here, and we will be talking to you.
The proceeding was recorded earlier because we were ashamed to do it now.
get fired!